Welcome to the Reindl Report, a podcast out of San Diego, California that rewrites the definition of mediocrity.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
So come along for the ride as Paul Reindl takes you through the world of sports with insight, interviews, and incredibly bad jokes.
It just seems like the people that are so butthurt about it.
Did you throw a butthurt out there?
Yeah, I said butthurt.
2005 calls. They want their turn back.
Yeah, walked right into that one.
Now, here's your host, Paul Reindl.
All right. Welcome to it. Episode 34 of the Reindl Report. What's going on, everybody? My name is Paul Reindl. This is the Reindl Report. This is a sports podcast based out of San Diego, focusing primarily on the San Diego sports scene, but we touch into the national scene as well. But not today. Definitely not on this podcast. There is just too much going on in San Diego, especially with the San Diego Chargers. If you're not a football fan, if you could care less about the Chargers, I still love you. You might not want to listen to this, although I'm going to try to make it worth your while either way. But San Diego, this is for you. I'm talking to you guys. I like to think that I'm not wrong very often, but I have been wrong for a little while now. This Chargers Stadium saga has been going on for coming on 15 years now. I've only been in San Diego 7 years. But really, for the last couple of years, when the talks of Los Angeles started to heat up and everything started to ramp up a bit, I remained incredibly optimistic. I said, they're not going anywhere. Dean Spanos doesn't have the huevos to move to LA. He doesn't want to move to LA. The NFL doesn't want him to move to LA. And LA doesn't want him. That had been my thought process this entire time. But over the last couple of weeks, and I kind of was hinting at it in my last podcast with Bernie Wilson, who felt the same way and then some. He was no holds barred in that podcast. That was episode 33. You can go on the reindlreport.blogspot.com or on iTunes and listen to that if you want. I would highly recommend it. Really good stuff out of old Bernie Wilson from the Associated Press. But really, my mindset has changed over the last couple of weeks. And now I'm at the point where I can say I was wrong. And the Chargers are gone. Now, if you're not in San Diego, if you're not following the story, they're not officially gone, but they're gone. They're leaving. And it comes at a time, at possibly the worst week in at least Chargers history, and maybe even just San Diego sports history. At least the potential to be the worst week in San Diego sports history, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. So rewind to this past Sunday. The Chargers lose to the Raiders. No surprise there. Raiders, they're fighting for the number 2 seed in the AFC. They're a very good team. The Raiders are back. Haven't made the postseason since 2002 when they went to the Super Bowl. I believe that was actually hosted here in San Diego, for what it's worth. No, the Raiders, they've had a very good season. They clinched a playoff berth with their victory over the Chargers, but this podcast has nothing to do with what happened on the field. I guess that's not true. It very loosely has something to do with what happened on the field. It's more what happened in the crowd and on the sidelines. So early in the game, you've probably heard this by now, but earlier in the game, I want to say it was early in the first quarter, Scott Kaplan, somebody that I work with at the Mighty 1090, he's a sideline reporter for CBS. He was doing the Chargers game. Spiridides throws down to Scott on the sideline for a sideline report And Scott talks about a conversation that he had with Dean Spanos. And I'm not even going to try to tell you what Scott said. I'm just going to play you what Scott said.
Spiro, I had a very candid pregame conversation with Chargers owner Dean Spanos, who told me, and this is the first time I've ever heard him say this, that he's now leaning towards moving his team to Los Angeles. His failed vote in November required 2/3. It only got 43%. He said if it would have gotten 50%, he would have committed to San Diego. He said he's holding out hope. He still plans to stay in San Diego, or at least not make a decision until after the season. But now he says he's leaning towards going to LA.
I call BS. That is some BS, Dean Spanos. Unbelievable. I was beside myself when I saw that on television. I could not believe what Scott had just said. There's so many different reasons why that made me upset, and I'll lay out a couple of them. But the first one is, why would you say that, Dean? Why would you do that? What's the point there? Just to piss off your fan base? Just to piss off the city that has hosted you and your team for 55 years? Look, you said after the election, after that beatdown that you got, 43% on Measure C, you needed 2/3, 66.7 or whatever. You needed 2/3 of the vote. You got 43. You ran a terrible campaign. You didn't market it at all. You didn't promote it. Yeah, you're going to say, "Oh, we went door to door." No, come on. Are you kidding me? You ran some ads on sports radio. You ran a couple of television ads, and you had a billboard at Qualcomm Stadium. That was it. And it was well known that this was a poorly written proposal. You didn't have enough time to get the mayor on board and all of that. This thing had no shot. I can't really think of a lot of measures that do have a shot at getting 66% of the vote. So you knew that going into it. So after that beatdown in the election, you say, well, we're not going to talk about LA. We're not going to talk about relocation. We're not going to make any decisions until after the season is over. Now, to Dean's credit, he did say, you'll probably hear some things through the news that we are going to, stuff about us in LA and meetings and all of that, but we got to keep all of our options open. And that has happened. That has happened. Mainly because a source within the Chargers is leaking all this information to guys like Jason La Canfora, who decides to post a column every Sunday morning around 9 o'clock every single week before a Chargers game talking about, this is it. Chargers are gone. They're moving to L.A. Interesting how that works out. But really what you're saying there, Dino, is we're not going to talk about relocation except for in terms of moving to L.A. What you're really saying is we're just not going to talk with San Diego. We're not going to talk about staying in San Diego until after the season's over. Well, the season's over right after New Year's. And the deadline to make good on your option to move to Los Angeles is January 15th. So you really telling me you're going to make your decision within 2 weeks? No. You already know what you're doing. Your mind is made up. If you're going to have all these meetings during the regular season with Los Angeles and have Mark Fabiani leaking bits of information to various groups in the media, you've already made up your mind. You know what you're doing. And it's shameful that you won't talk to the city at least. And how the city, when they came up with a proposal, the 4 San Diego city councilmen came up with a proposal to offer you the lease at Qualcomm for $1 a year for 99 years. Was it the greatest proposal? Probably not. Would it have been nice for the city to put something like that together maybe a year ago instead of, 4 or 5 weeks before the deadline for the team to move to LA? Sure. But at least they did something. They threw a Hail Mary late in the fourth quarter, and Dean, as a receiver, you didn't even run your route. You didn't even make an effort. In fact, you had a source within the organization say that it infuriated you and it was a slap in your face. What is wrong with you? How is that a slap in your face? Are you kidding me? You are slapping San Diego in the face. You are slapping the fans that have supported you for years and years and have spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars on tickets and shown up to the games and supported this team through 4-12 seasons, through a 1-15 season with Ryan Leaf. Those fans, they're the ones being slapped in the face, Dean Spanos. And the next thing that bugs me is if you were going to say that, if you're going to say 50% is the threshold, why not say that before the election? Why not? It might not have helped. I'm not saying it definitely would have. I am saying it definitely wouldn't have hurt. Obviously, if the team was winning, that wouldn't have hurt either. But Dean, if that was your point, if that was, 50 plus 1%, if that was your point to say, I am committing to San Diego, I'll go to the California Supreme Court. I will fight until they change this rule that it doesn't have to be 2/3. It can be 50 plus 1. If that was your breaking point to stay here in San Diego and work with the city, whether it's Mission Valley or downtown, why not say that before the vote? You could have come out and said, look, we understand 66%, 2/3, it's going to be tough, if not impossible. We understand that. If we can just get 50%, then we'll stay. That's enough of a sign that we can stay here. It wouldn't have hurt. Hell, it might have given you that extra 7% that you needed. Fans that might have been on the fence about things could have just said, well, you know what? I don't think this is the greatest deal for the city, but if we can let's just get them the 50%. It's not going to pass. It's not going to get 2/3. Let's just get them the 50%. We'll work from there. It buys us some time to work out a deal that works for both sides. Why not say that before the election? Now, sure, again, some people probably could have just assumed that that was your point, that was your mindset. They're like, oh, maybe if he gets close to 2/3, he'll stick around. But we didn't have you definitively saying anything. You hadn't gone on record, because you never go on record unless it's on a podium next to Roger Goodell and Mark Davis and you're trying to fight for LA, or it's a video that you post on Chargers.com ran by somebody in the media department that, let's be honest, probably was their softball questions. I mean, come on. Dean probably wrote them himself and just said, here, just ask me these questions. I've already got the answers prepared. You can just ask me those and nothing else, and that'll be good. That's the only time Dean goes public. Why not say it before the election? And it's incredibly frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating. That was just the start to a really rough day for the San Diego Chargers. Maybe the worst home game ever. I don't know. Maybe. I remember watching that Dolphins game last year at the end of the year. We thought this could be the last Chargers game in San Diego. I think there was a little more optimism there than there might be heading into next weekend's game against the Chiefs to close the season out. That very well could be the last San Diego Chargers game. But that Raiders game, I mean, I'm hearing estimates. I was not there. I'm hearing estimates of 95% of the crowd donning the silver and black. I've heard conservative estimates at no less than 75%. 3 out of 4 people with the makeup and the crazy masks and everything. 3 out of 4 people at Qualcomm on Sunday rooting for the opposing team. Phillip Rivers said it after the game. It was a road game. A bunch of the players were not thrilled. Why would they be? Now they're not. I really don't think a lot of them are blaming the fans. I think they're blaming the situation and their performance on the field probably didn't help. I'm telling you right now, if the Chargers are, instead of 5-8 heading into that game or whatever they were, if they were 8-5, if they were in the playoff hunt, I don't think 95% of that crowd is Raiders fans, but I still think the majority of them would be. That's just the way it is. It's the way it's been now for a while. Not just the Raiders. I mean, the Broncos, they travel well. The Packers, the Steelers, the Patriots. Some teams travel well, especially teams like Green Bay, Pittsburgh, Denver. What do those 3 cities have in common? They're very cold. And when there's a game in San Diego in December, when it's 15 degrees at their place and it's 75 and sunny at Qualcomm, who wouldn't want to take a December vacation to go watch their football team play in San Diego, right? We know that. We expect that. It happens. And it's fine. It's honestly, it doesn't bother me that much. But like I said, conservative 75%. I've seen anything as high as 95%. Just for the sake of this podcast, we'll break it somewhere in the middle. 85%, say. 85% of Qualcomm, of the 66,000 people that were there, were rooting against the Chargers. The Chargers did not even do player introductions because they would have been booed because it was essentially a Raiders home game. Raiders quarterback Derek Carr, not David Carr, that's his brother, Derek Carr, said after the game, it's great. We get 9 home games. We got the best advantage in the NFL. And he's right, they do. I mean, you can't knock that. They essentially have a 9th home game. So for the Chargers to not even do their player introductions, for Phillip Rivers, Antonio Gates, and the rest of those guys, they just came out of the tunnel and went to the sideline, and that was it. Because they were going to get booed in their home stadium by the opposing crowd. The opposing crowd's boos would have overpowered whatever couple of hundred Chargers fans there were at the game. Then you have Dean Spanos do what he does, talks to Scott. Scott says that in the first quarter. That spreads like wildfire throughout Twitter. The Chargers blow a fourth quarter lead. They lose 19-16. It's amazing. I'm 15 minutes into this podcast. It's the first time I've even said the score because the game didn't matter. It was what was going on around the game. So now why do I say that this could be the worst week in Chargers history and maybe even San Diego sports history? Again, I didn't grow up in San Diego. I'm not a lifelong San Diegan. I'm an adopted San Diegan. So I would have to do some research and see what the worst week in San Diego sports could be. But here's where I think that this all could play out. You have everything I just talked about. The Raiders game, the relocation, the BS of, we would have stayed if we got 50%. And the question of why even say that. All of that from Sunday. Comes out this week. A video gets released that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, if any, but I guess I'll have to spend a couple of seconds on because when something gets millions and millions of views and it's around your team and something that you cover, you kind of have to talk about it. There was a video that went out on Facebook, I think is where it originated from, Twitter. I mean, everybody picked it up. Everybody picked up this video and it's the definition of viral. And it was a security guard pleasuring himself, I guess, on the field near some of the Chargers cheerleaders who were doing their thing. And he's got his hand in his pants. And that's all I need to say. That's the only description I need to give. You should probably be able to figure out what's going on. And if you're one of the millions and millions of people that feels they need to see that video, then you can go see for yourself. I got to imagine there's something wrong with that guy. I was listening to Darren Smith on the Mighty 1090, and I think he just put it well. He goes, who in their right mind would do that? Oh, that's right. Nobody in their right mind would do that. Just blatantly right there, not even really hiding it at all. Who in their right mind would do that? Nobody in their right mind would do it. So maybe the guy is sick, mentally ill. I don't know. But regardless, that was a huge story. that came out on Tuesday, the Tuesday following the Raiders game now. So you got everybody saying on Sunday, oh, the Chargers are going to move. Dean Spanos told Scott Kaplan that he's leaning towards L.A. and because he didn't get 50% of the vote. Now you have this video on the Chargers, and the Chargers, to cap things off, to cap off what could be the worst week in San Diego sports history, they got to play the 0-14 Cleveland Browns, and they might ruin their perfect season. I am not convinced that San Diego's going to win. I think they're 6-point favorites heading into Cleveland. And I do think San Diego's the more talented team, absolutely. I mean, Cleveland's 0-14. That's not a hot take that San Diego's the better team. San Diego's lost in just about every way you can lose a game this season. They've done it. And with I'm trying to think of the right word, demoralization that happened on Sunday, I can't say how motivated these guys are to go out there Christmas Eve in the cold Cleveland, and I don't know. I would expect the Chargers to win, don't get me wrong, but if Cleveland wins, if Cleveland gets their first win of the season, the Raiders game, the viral video, and then losing to the winless Browns all within 6 days. I mean, that I can't imagine how that could what could make a worse sports week in San Diego. Fans would completely disenfranchise the team. They would just be done with them. And they'd just be like, okay, just tell us you're moving to LA now. We expect it. Come on, just rip the Band-Aid off. Don't peel it off. Just come on, one quick swipe. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope I'm wrong. I would have no problem with being wrong. But like I said at the beginning, my mindset has completely changed just over the last couple of weeks. And the team is gone. And it's time to start thinking about what's next for San Diego. I mean, the MLS, has expressed some interest. I know AEG, the group that owns, the Staples Center, they want to build essentially Staples Center South downtown in downtown San Diego. They want to put a state-of-the-art arena to attract the NHL, the NBA. San Diego State's going to get screwed. We got to find them a place to play football. I think that's still just down the road. And I know a lot of people are starting to think, well, we got to start thinking about life without the Chargers. Why not? Look, the NBA doesn't want it. They're not going to come to San Diego. I know the NBA's been here, but the NBA said they don't want to relocate. They're not looking to expand. They're not looking to relocate right now. I think that's just getting too far ahead of ourselves. I really do. I don't know about the NHL. I think the MLS would be great for San Diego. I'm very much on record saying I'm not a big fan of soccer. Doesn't do much for me. But I'm not stupid. I know that a lot of people, especially in San Diego, there is a hotbed for San Diego or for soccer fans in San Diego. I think the MLS would do very well in San Diego. Extremely well in San Diego. And if we could find a way to get them a stadium, 35,000 seat stadium that could have the Aztecs and the MLS play, I'd be for that. I wouldn't be for it at the expense of losing the NFL and losing the Chargers, but I would be in favor of it. Got a couple more things. I wanted to tell a little story. I don't get to do story time very often on the podcast. I'm not really sure why either. I like telling stories, but it kind of relates to this. And if you're still with me, look, I have been through a relocation process before. Having grown up in Seattle, I was in Seattle during 2008 season when the NBA stole the Seattle Sonics from the hearts of fans that had supported that team for over 40 years. And I have drawn a lot of comparisons just in conversations with people over the last couple of years, really having started following this Chargers story. I've drawn a lot of comparisons to what happened in Seattle and being able to tell people, hey, I've been down that road. It sucks. I know you're upset with the ownership. I know you're upset right now, and part of you just wants to say, screw it, get out of here then. Telling you, if that's your mindset, you're going to regret it. Please don't Please don't feel that way. Now, look, there were differences between the Sonics and the Chargers, but there was also a lot of similarities between the two stories. Differences would be the Sonics' previous owner, Howard Scumbag Schultz, owner of Starbucks. He sold the team to Clay Bennett from Oklahoma City, whose business was based in Oklahoma City. Everything he has is based in Oklahoma City. But he goes, well, I'm not going to move the team. I don't want to move the team. I have no intention to move the team to Oklahoma City. Why would I do that? Keep them here in Seattle. Leaked emails get out. He's writing emails to the commissioner, to David Stern, saying, hey, David, you're a great friend of mine. I've respected you forever. How can we get out of this lease with Seattle and move the team to Oklahoma City? And just a lot of corruption, a lot of scandal, and stuff that went public. And it was really, really just a twist of the knife to Sonics fans in Seattle, and it still is a very sensitive subject. I know that I probably have a couple of you listening right now in Seattle, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. 8 years later, almost 9 years later, and it still stings. And when they left, I didn't want anything to do with the Oklahoma City Thunder. I was done with that franchise, completely done. Now, the difference being with the Chargers, ownership hasn't changed. Dean didn't sell the Chargers to somebody in LA that's like, we're not going to move them to LA. Why would we want to do that? But the way the fans have been treated, that's the way the Sonics fans were treated. Very similar. Trade the team, gut the team so that they have a couple of horrible seasons in a row. Make the fan base not care about the team. Demand a ridiculous amount of public money from the city to build a billionaire his play place. I don't know. I sure see some comparisons there. I really do. And so look, I guess at the end of the day, the only reason I tell that little anecdote, the only reason I draw that comparison and I tell that story is because I don't want to go through that again. I really don't. Look, I said it. I'm not a born and raised San Diegan. But I have adopted this city, and I have adopted this football team. Been here coming on 8 years, which I know probably isn't a ton in the grand scheme of things, especially to some of you that might be listening. I get it. But I'm not saying this to you or at you or anything like that. I'm saying it with you. I'm with you on this, okay? I don't want to go through this process again. It hurts. It hurts to lose a team like that. So I guess what I'm saying is if you're listening, if you're a Chargers fan and you're just over it and you're done, believe me, I understand. And all I'm saying is I'm with you. I'm with you. We're going to have a lot more to talk about with the Chargers, I think, in the next couple of weeks based on, well, the fact that the regular season's wrapping up. We'll have to do a season recap, of course. And then after that, the clock's ticking. And in my opinion, it's a ticking clock of just when is Dean going to say, all right, we're moving to LA? When's the announcement going to be made? That's about it. I cannot envision any other way that they stay at this point. And, I read, which I would highly, highly recommend, Mark Ziegler in the Union Tribune wrote a column the other day. I believe it was Tuesday morning, Tuesday the 20th, Tuesday, December 20th. He wrote a column and he called out Dean. He called his bluff. He said, do it. If you're going to keep threatening the city and keep holding LA over this fan base's heads, go for it. Do it, Dean. Let's see it. Show your cards. Let's go. Great column. And he was right on, because that's been the most frustrating part. Dean won't just lay it all out and say, look, this is what I want. This is what the cards are. If this doesn't happen in a year, we are leaving. Look at Mark Davis and the Raiders. He's made it super clear this entire time, I'm leaving Oakland. Now, the difference is he's at least entertaining offers and, proposals from the city to try to get something done in Oakland. But he's been extremely clear from the beginning, hey, I'm getting out of here. Sorry. I'll listen, but I'm moving. This is the proposal. We want Vegas. This is the stadium plan, blah, 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 blah. He put it all out there. And Dean goes, well, we're going to put out a proposal and we're going to see what happens. And then they get their asses kicked at the election. And he goes, well, we're just going to wait and see. We don't really want to, we're going to talk about it after the season and we'll figure it out from there. No, Dean, no. Just say this is what needs to happen. This is the time frame. Otherwise, I'm gone. Stop being vague. It is so frustrating. Anyways, to wrap up the podcast, a couple more things that I haven't gotten to that I want to get to. College football. San Diego State, very impressive win in the Las Vegas Bowl over Houston. Incredibly impressive win over Houston. Houston, one of the better defenses in the NCAA. And they jumped out to a 10-0 lead. And they stopped San Diego in every way in the first quarter. I think San Diego had 5 yards total offense in the first quarter. And I'm thinking, well, this doesn't look too good. Donnell Pumphrey, San Diego State, he needed 108 yards to pass Ron Dane. Kind of. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But to pass Ron Dane for the all-time NCAA rushing leader. And he did. Now, after that first quarter, I thought, I don't think he's going to do it because Houston looks to be on point. And they were. They dominated that first quarter, tip of the cap. But then San Diego State, the way they responded and the way they came out of halftime, they put up 34 unanswered points. And Donnell Pumphrey got the record. Unbelievable moment for San Diego State Aztecs fans. It was unbelievable. It was billed as one of the better bowl games to somewhat high-profile teams in a decent bowl. This wasn't the Little Caesars GoDaddy.com bowl. It's the Las Vegas Bowl. It's a pretty solid bowl game. It's not, the Fiesta Bowl, the Rose Bowl, or anything like that, I know. But it was a good bowl. It's a good bowl to have. And I think that was the most impressive win that San Diego State's ever had. Ever. And it was awesome to witness. Donnell Pumphrey, San Diego State. I can barely get the words out. It blows me away. When you look at the all-time college football rushing leaders, the number one guy has SDSU next to his name. Just think about that. That is incredible. This is a kid who, coming out of Nevada out of high school, he was ranked the 4th best running back just in the state of Nevada. He didn't get a lot of offers. He wasn't turning down big schools. He wasn't a 5-star recruit turning down Power 5 schools to come to San Diego State or anything like that. And look at what he's done. And this is on a team that became the first team in NCAA history to have a 2,000-yard rusher in Donnell Pumphrey and a 1,000-yard rusher in Rashad Penny. A team has never had that before. A 2,000 and a 1,000-yard rusher on the same squad in the same year. So for him to break that all-time record, essentially splitting carries with a very other talented running back, that is mind-blowing. Now, you might be wondering why I said kinda. Why did he kinda pass Ron Dane? Well, because Ron Dane, when he was running with Wisconsin, he ran in the late 90s for them. And it wasn't until, I want to say, 99 or 2000 that the NCAA started counting bowl games as your career stats. But they didn't retroactively go and change anything. So Ron Dane played in a lot of bowl games, and he collected a lot of yards in those bowl games. Donnell Pumphrey, I think, passed him at like 6,300 yards, something like that. It was like 6,394, somewhere in that range. I don't have the number in front of me. I know it's close to that. Ron Dane really had 7,125 yards. That one I do know because he posted it on Twitter. His congratulations to DJ. But, it doesn't make sense to me why the NCAA decided not to go back and retroactively add those statistics. I don't understand it. It would make perfect sense to do it, right? And I'm not arguing, I'm not really like bashing Pumphrey at all or anything like that. I'm just saying, I mean, I think we can all jump on board that it would have been very simple to do. They have those box scores, but the NCAA chose to say, no, from this point forward, we're counting bowl games. We're not going to go back and change anything, but from this point forward, we'll count the bowl games. And because of that, Donnell Pumphrey passed Ron Dane, number 1 all-time on the NCAA rushing list. And you know what? Sorry, Ron Dane, you're number 2 now. I mean, I can totally understand why Wisconsin fans and why Ron Dane and his boys and his family are going to say, nope, I'm number 1. Put an asterisk next to Pumphrey. I get it, but I'm going to go off what the NCAA says. I'm going to go off if I go to NCAA.com and I look at the all-time rushing list, that's the list I'm going off of. Sorry, I'm not sorry. How about that? And if the NCAA ever decides to retroactively go back and add that 5-10 years down the road, and all of a sudden Ron Dane is number 1, I'll say, okay, Pumphrey's number 2 then. He was number 1 for a while. That was cool. But look, just as somebody, as a San Diego State guy, I mean, look, I bleed black and red, okay? Everybody bleeds red, I guess, but not everybody bleeds black and red. And just, it's kind of like when I see Kawhi Leonard winning an NBA championship, being a top 5 player in the league, just dominating with the Spurs. I go, that was our guy. That was our guy up there on the Mesa. I got to watch that guy play for little old San Diego State in the Mountain West. That's our guy. And now our guy is number 1 above a group of incredibly talented running backs, guys that have gone on to have really nice NFL careers and that were superstars in college. And our guy is number 1. I just thought that was incredible. That was so awesome, so fun to watch. Great season for the Aztecs. They go another 11-win season, back-to-back Mountain West championships. Hey, life's good. Life is good for the red and black. So that was the good news. I'm going to, unfortunately, end this podcast on some sad news, some tough news, because I didn't do a podcast since it happened. Trying to figure out exactly how I'd like to do this. So I'm going to wrap things up with my usual spiel, how you can go to the rinderreport.blogspot.com and catch this podcast as well as all the other podcasts that I've done, all the other interviews. Everything is archived for you there. And you go on iTunes. You can go on iTunes and subscribe. And when I post these podcasts, you get it right to your phone. I think you even get a little notification on there. It's great. I would love it if you would support me that way. Support the podcast. That would be awesome. And so that's all I have to say. The sad news that I have to end on, Craig Sager passed away last week. And he lost his battle with leukemia. And it was just very tough, very sad. He was only, I think, 65, 66, somewhere in there. And it seemed like an absolutely, just a genuinely good guy. Very well respected, one of the best sideline reporters ever. People are going to remember him for the outlandish jackets and the ridiculous ties and everything that he would wear. It's been really fun for me to see guys, other sideline reporters paying homage to Craig Sager and wearing goofy suits and stuff like that. Craig Sager, he got Greg Popovich to smile. He got Greg Popovich to laugh and joke around with him. Not an easy thing to do. Craig Sager could do it. And, he had been fighting for a while now. And, I mean, he worked for TNT, TBS, whatever. He didn't work for ESPN, but ESPN had the rights to the finals last year, Cavs, Warriors, and Craig Sager had never gotten to do an NBA Finals game because he didn't work for that company. And I just remember that was one of my favorite memories. That'll be probably my favorite memory of Craig Sager and just really in sports in general, to see a guy that was so well respected that one company will say to the other company, hey, can we steal your guy we'll give him a one-day contract or whatever. We want to honor him and allow him to do the NBA Finals because we don't know how much more time he's got. Turns out that was his last NBA Finals that he was alive for. And people like Doris Burke, ESPN sideline reporter, they said, absolutely, I have no problem. He takes one sideline, I'll take the other. That is totally great. I just thought that was awesome. Sports bringing people together like that. It made me happy. So it was tough to see that Craig Sager had passed away. I wanted to end the podcast with some of his words, not mine. I don't want to. I know it is kind of a sad subject, but I don't want us to be sad about Craig Sager. Instead, I want to end the podcast of us celebrating Craig Sager and hearing his words. This is going to be a clip from the ESPYs when he won the Jimmy V Award and gave a tremendous speech. So even though I am signing off, I am saying stick around. I think it's like 2 to 3 minutes. It'll be worth your time. Let's celebrate Craig Sager and the man that he was. Thanks for listening in, and I will talk to you soon.
Time is something that cannot be bought. It cannot be wagered with God, and it is not in endless supply. Time is simply how you live your life. I am not an expert on time or on cancer or on life itself. I'm a kid from the small Illinois town of Batavia who grew up on the Chicago Cubs and made sports his life's work, although there's never been a day where it actually seemed like work. I have run with the Bulls in Pamplona. I have raced with Mario Andretti in Indianapolis. I have climbed the Great Wall of China. I have jumped out of airplanes over Kansas. I have wrestled gators in Florida. I have sailed the ocean with Ted Turner. I have swam with the oceans in the Caribbean. And I have interviewed Greg Popovich. If I've learned anything through all of this, it's that each and every day is a canvas waiting to be painted. An opportunity for love, for fun, for living, for learning. To those of you out there who are suffering from cancer, facing adversity, I want you to know that your will to live and to fight cancer can make all the difference in the world. The way you think influences the way you feel, and the way you feel determines how you act. And to everybody out there, we are making progress, incredible progress. As the Vice President said, the Moonshot program, we are going to find a cure for cancer. But we need your help. We must continue to donate. We must continue to fight. And we must continue to do this together. I am grateful to my parents, Coral and Al. They raised me with a positive outlook on life. I always see the glass half full. I see the beauty in others, and I see the hope for tomorrow. If we don't have hope and faith, we have nothing. Whatever I might have imagined a terminal diagnosis would do to my spirit, it summoned quite the opposite. The greatest appreciation for life itself. So I will never give up, and I will never give in. I will continue to keep fighting, sucking the marrow out of life as life sucks the marrow out of me. I will live my life full of love and full of fun. It's the only way I know how. Thank you, and good night.